Crypto Kong. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you? How's everyone?
Yeah, so we should have some people jumping in. Hey, there's
Gang,
Vets.
gang.
Vets in crypto. Never seen this gentleman before. Excellent. Yeah, thanks for jumping in. So Crypto Kong and I connected last week. We're like, hey, let's jump on a stream and see if maybe we can instill some life into the community because everything's kind of like blood in the streets and everybody's a little bit depressed, whatever. But so let's jump on a stream and talk about ICOSA. And the topics that we're going to discuss today are in the description for the video. We're going to cover ceiling prices. I made a little calculator about how to exit the rat race, and Kong's going to cover some things. You want to talk about what you're going to tell the audience what you think you're going to cover today?
Yeah, I'm gonna do some 90-day compounding, HSI auctions, some upcoming stuff, plus some recent yields. We're gonna look at that. Account sizes, Bitcoin's inflation versus like early day ICOSA inflation. Hopefully, we're gonna look at ICOSA pulse ratio. So
Ooh.
potentially, like the lower liquidity asset might outperform the 50, or tens of $1 million of liquidity asset. We're gonna also talk about ink compounding, V1 and V2 pools, where to farm, and like your risks attached to farming as well. And we also have a special announcement, right, Eric?
Yes, we do. So we'll announce that later on in the video. But so Kong and I have been conspiring to get somebody on a stream, and so far we've been successful. So we'll announce that later. Um, but I do want to announce also. I'll do this right now that I've been trying to get Crispy on, and we're going to do some legacy stuff like exiting, leaving a legacy for your family, ensuring that your crypto assets are secure and that you don't leave like zombie wallets. So I'm working with Crispy on that. Proof of Beards, we're interviewing him on Thursday. Yeah, and I saw you did a live stream recently. How did that go?
Oh, it went great actually. Got a bunch of topics covered. Chat was pretty active, so it was pretty good. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, those are a lot of fun. All right, Fox is in there. I've never seen him before. I think that he probably tunes into your channel quite a bit. DJ
DJ
Bomber,
Bomber.
Grounded in Hex. Nice. Okay, learn how to show some comments. Excellent. Lots on the agenda. Yeah. Okay. We can just take turns. You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll kick it off here. I want to talk about account sizes actually to start off. Um, because I think that's one of what it kind of links into compounding a little bit. And it's like one of the questions I get asked a lot is when your 90-day stakes are up, are you gonna have to create more accounts because now you have more yield, right? More ICOSA, more yield. So here we're gonna take a look at Hex model. Just check it out. Let me find my screen.
By accounts, are you talking about like wallet addresses?
Wallet addresses. Yeah. So that's probably the other thing I should clarify. So in ICOSA, when I say accounts, um, ideally in hex staking, you would bigger pays better and longer pays better. Now in ICOSA, these principles don't exactly apply the same way. So what you could do in ICOSA is actually a bunch of shorter stakes. Now
Mm,
shorter could pay better because you can compound it faster than a longer person. So when I talk about account sizes, I just mean taking your original principal and breaking it up into like different public keys in order to maintain a 90-day minimum stake length. So in
right.
this case, currently the minimum or the maximum stake for a squid, which is 90-day account, is around 951 ICOSA, 952 ICOSA. You can see it here. So around 90 days ago, this was about 450 or maybe 400, 500 ish.
That's right.
So, so yeah, we've been the ICOSA, and just to tell you guys where the account size come from, it is correlated to the ICOSA supply. So as the ICOSA supply fluctuates, so will the account size. So to put this in perspective, Let's say you had a bunch of accounts from 90 days ago. When you were to go compound and restake today, instead of actually needing to create more accounts, what you can do is consolidate, and you could actually start creating less accounts because your account size has gone up. Another way of another way you could do this that actually makes the compounding even more effective is if you just top up each of the account with a brand new ICOSA to fill up each account again. That's another very effective strategy to help you like continuously compound, right? Because if you're adding to your compounds, it's gonna even more exponentially like compound, right?
Yep.
So yeah, that's one thing with the account size is after these compounds after 90 days, you chances are you will not have to create more accounts than what you already have, but you could either top up your current ones or even consolidate into less accounts after your 90 days is up. So
There you go. I got some
yeah.
comments on that. So I've got some 90-day stakes that are ending on like the 21st, and and I made them before the fork, so they're on both chains. So I know that the Pulse ones are going to be inexpensive to restake, and but the ones on the ETH side are going to be a little more expensive. So and I gotta move. I'm supposed to move them to hidden wallets because that's what I'm doing now. I moved up to that level. Finally figured that out. And but what I've decided, because the value of the ICOSA, see, in theory, what I want to do is take some of the I can either inject fiat to do those transactions, or I can take some of the yield and exchange it for Ethereum to pay for the gas to do those transactions. But because the value of the ICOSA is so little, I'm probably not going to move those assets into hidden wallets. I'm probably not even going to move the Hedron. Probably just going to end those stakes, and like you said, restake them. And I don't even think I'll have to move any of the yield, because the supply has increased so greatly since the fork. I think I could probably just end those stakes, and this is what I'm planning to do: end them and then just restart them. But I'm really happy to see that we can stake like nearly 1,000 ICOSA on both chains in a 90-day stake.
Yeah, it's getting a lot easier now with larger principles to get in there and start compounding. One
Hmm.
thing that I don't necessarily like to swap my yield back for the gas fee. I would rather sort of pay the gas fee outright. And my sort of reasoning behind that is it's sort of like it helps the exponential compound nature. So I get to like keep a little bit more ICOSA, keep a little bit more of my endpoints. Plus, when you're swapping
Okay.
some of your ICOSA for ETH, how I look at it is ICOSA is most likely not financial advice. It has a chance to outperform Ethereum. So if you're swapping, let's say this asset, ICOSA for an asset like Ethereum, you might be swapping like a 20x for an 8x into the next bull market. So
Right.
yeah, that's one thing. And then on the Pulse chain network, it you could almost like make the argument for swapping some of your ICOSA back to pay for the yield, because if you're not speculating ICOSA is going to outperform Pulse chain, then you might want to get back your gas fee, and like the endpoint might not be as important, right? But on Ethereum specifically, I really like to just pay the gas fee, like add new fiat in to pay for
Hmm.
gas fees, because I look at it like almost trading a 10x for a 20 or 30x.
Agreed. That's typically what I do is inject new gas.
Yeah.
I just buy Ethereum. But that's like my worst case scenario, is like if I have to, then I can just swap that yield for gas money.
When
But
is a 180-day stake or longer beneficial over 90? So, I can take this one if you want.
yeah, yeah, okay. I love to guess, and I don't think at 100. This is just me shooting from the hip. I don't think at 180-day or longer is going to be more beneficial than a 90, except for gas.
Yeah. I think that's exactly it. Like if we're talking about, let's say, ICOSA and you're on the pulse chain, you have lower fees. You don't really care about the gas. Uh, a 180-day stake isn't really going to benefit you any more than doing 90-day stakes. Especially in that same time frame, if you compound your 90-day stakes, those are massively going to outperform just one singular 180-day one, especially on the pulse chain with the lower fees, right?
Yep. Agreed.
When it could be beneficial though, if you have an absurd amount of ICOSA, it could be beneficial if you just don't want to like spend the extra time to make all the different accounts. Then you could benefit from like having maybe a 180 instead of a 270 sort of thing. It's like a 180 and like a few 90s, for example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Agreed. And one day soon, like August 31st, we're gonna have Tetra. If you guys haven't heard of Tetra, what Tetra allows us to do is, to me, it's like Tetra is like a utility that anybody can use. I think on any blockchain. And what it allows you to do is pre-program any interactions that you can make with the blockchain. Any wallet transactions that you need to do can be pre-programmed with Tetra. So, like, if you wanted to do, pre-program your ICOSA stakes, your Hedron stakes, that can all be done in advance. So that's going to be pretty exciting. And I know that CryptoSloth and several other gentlemen, Red Squirrel, they're working on scripts that we're going to be able to like use to do those transactions. So it's pretty exciting. All right. Yes, Kong is legit. Smart peeps. Everyone listen to Kong. There you go.
Thank you, man.
Okay, so I think what I want to do right now, Kong, is I want to show my ceiling price calculator. Let me just make it a little bit bigger so it fits the screen. And I'll present, share screen. Let's go here. I gotta find the exact one. Here we go. Okay. Let me tune it up a little bit before I present it. So this is going to be very simple, guys. I just kind of want, and I might even jump to the other calc right after this, but I dropped this. It seems like I dropped this into I screenshot it and drop it into the Telegram chat quite often. I think mainly for new people. So sorry if you're a veteran in here, you've seen this a dozen times. But if you look at the ceiling price, the ceiling price is like, I mean, I'm not the best at explaining it, but why would you buy Hex and stake it in an HSI if you could buy a COSA and then put that back into the system or something like that? It's like the most you would pay for ICOSA. Do you have a way of explaining it, Kong, what the ceiling price is?
How I like to explain it is just when your like value of ICOSA you can mint from an HSI is equal to the hex stake itself. So,
There you go.
like when an arbitrage opportunity presents itself in the ICOSA ecosystem.
Yep. So like with Hex at 0.8 of a cent, the ceiling price for ICOSA is 35 cents. And we know we're not there right now. We're, quite a bit less. And what are we at right now? Do you know what the price of
I think
ICOSA is?
EICOSA is around 6 to 8 cents.
Yeah. Okay. So we're about a 4x below the ceiling price. And I've never really seen it below, like more than 5x below the ceiling price. But so as you see the price of Hex increase, that ICOSA, and let's not neglect the Hedron ceiling price as well. So the ICOSA, as the price of Hex increases, the ceiling price for ICOSA and Hedron both increase as well, and they're all dependent on the share rate also. So, like when Hex gets back to its previous all-time high of 50 cents, Well, the ICOSA ceiling price would be $23. And if you divide that by 5, like if ICOSA remained at a 5x below the ceiling price, 23 divided by 5, that'd be $4.60 ICOSA. And then the Hedron has always been like about a 40x, I think, below the ceiling price. So, and then as we hope the price of hex, continues to increase, you can see this number increases. So ICOSA stands to be, and Hedron stand to be quite valuable going into the future, we presume. Not financial advice, as Kong says, but we hope that they'll increase in value as well. Do you have any comments on that?
So yeah, I mean, ICOSA it's based off the T share. So as the T share rate increases, so will the ceiling price.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that if the hex price stays the same, but you just wait 10 years, the ceiling price hopefully would have opened up enough to allow ICOSA some room to pump. Now, another thing about the ceiling price is it's not like a coded in, like hard coded, like ceiling price that
Yep.
price can't go over this amount. It's just the price where the arbitrage opportunity presents itself. So what we've seen and what we can see is ICOSA go over the ceiling price. Maybe it's only by 1 or 2%. Maybe it's by 100 or 200%. But that will just mean more yield. Like, because what will happen is if people start to arbitrage the price down, they're going to need to go get HSIs. When people go get those HSIs, they're going to end up in the liquidation. After 90 days, we're going to be able to bid on those using our Hedron. And when Hedron gets burnt, slash when you bid on these HSIs using the Hedron and then it gets burnt, that'll essentially turn into ICOSA yield for us. So it's actually very good, not only for price but for yield, if we can get above that ceiling price. And then sort of how we've seen it now is ICOSA has these inflationary deflationary mechanics where at the start,
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could say it didn't really have much inflation, but as soon as you start having people start trading in their HSIs and then start getting all the yield and start bidding on all the HSIs, you had like this hyperinflation, right? And I guess
Right.
you could say that might have influenced some of the price to go down, because if you have a lot of people getting we're going to say free coins for a lack of a better term, they might be more incentivized to sell, right? So that might have some negative price depreciation in the short term, but in the long term, what we could see is ICOSA eventually going at maybe close or near its ceiling price and still having insane price appreciation with or against Hex, right?
Agreed. Let's address this question here from Fox. He says, thanks. So even though you still earn yield after your stake period ends and you don't harvest for a 180-day stake, it's worth to harvest and restake as multiple 90-day stakes. And I'll just take this one. I would say yes, because you're breaking up. You would be, let's say you have 2,000 ICOSA in a 180-day stake, and then including your principal and your interest, and you're going to break that up into two 90-day ICOSA stakes. So those two 90-day stakes are going to both be earning yield that you can compound after 90 days. So after 90 days, you can compound your yield back into those stakes and stake them again. So you might have 3 stakes at the end of 180 days versus 1 stake, if that makes sense.
And another thing I'd like to add on to the 90-day accounts is I've talked to a lot of people, and hex staking is very good, but it's very like long-term, gradual, slow process, especially if you're not like trying to time your hex stakes and you're just staking or mining it for your hex. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
long, slow, gradual process. Now, what I like about ICOSA is it seems like it's more up pace, especially with the 90-day accounts. You can see it happen right in front of you. You can compound it right in front of you, and you're not locked up like in Hex for as long as maybe 15 years. So in ICOSA, if you have only 90-day accounts, if you wait 90 days in any given time frame, all of your accounts will be finished, right? Whereas if you have some like 270-day accounts, if you have a 180-day account, if you wait any 90-day time frame, you're still going to have to incur a penalty or incur some sort of loss if you want to end your stakes well early, right? So that's another reason why the 90-day strategy is very nice as well, because you're not only staked, but how I've set myself up and how I recommend setting yourself up if you want to set up a staking ladder is to try and stagger it out. Like if whether you like DCA stakes in and they're kind of staggered out. That way you can have almost ICOSA coming out within every month or any like weekly or bi-weekly time frame. You're able to have an account coming out, as well as like if you need to early end stake, you're not taking like a massive penalty on a massive principal. You're just maybe taking a smaller penalty on a smaller principal if you need to, right? So those are just also some things to keep in mind. Obviously, like in ICOSA, the longest you can stake is 360 days in terms of like account size. You can stake forever, like you don't have to touch your coins. But
Mm-hmm.
if your goal and your strategy is just yield, if you just do 90-day accounts, compound it, and that way it's almost like semi-stake, semi-liquid, because you're not only staked, but you're still earning the yield, but it's like almost liquid in a way where it's not there, it's not locked up for 15 years.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. X Blind says, can't believe it caught alive. Cool. Can you touch on if whether or not ETH fees will be an issue in the bull with regard to the 90-day strategy? Thanks. Yeah, it'll be an issue. But also at that time, we think that ICOSA will be more of a, so on my previous comments about, exchanging your ICOSA for ETH, which is perhaps not a good idea, but you can look at it that way. If the value of ICOSA follows the value of ETH, why then the additional cost of gas just becomes a wash, to use a accounting term.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like what you do notice in a bull market is the gas fees are not only more expensive, but your coins are also more expensive. So it kind
Mm-hmm.
of it's a little bit of a balancing act. As well as like I know Ethereum is hopefully getting some upgrades in the future. So hopefully like maybe even by the end of 15 years, hopefully gas fees won't be as big of a problem as they are now.
Agreed. Yep. And this is the beautiful thing about the ICOSA staking platform, is that you can just let those stakes sit.
Yeah.
And I love that. There's no penalty for just leaving them there. And they will just continue to accrue yield. It's beautiful. Yep. Alex is the champ. Alex made it easy to do maintenance on your stakes. Just leave them there. It's like the maintenance free car that everybody dreams about, or
Yeah.
house. Uh, just put $4,000 into a well in my house yesterday. So that hits home. Yeah, like and share. If you guys like this kind of content, like and share it on both channels. We're streaming this on Prairie Banana and Crypto Kong, so you have two channels to like this on. But hey, how about you address a couple of your questions, a couple of your topics that you wanted to cover?
Yeah, sure. I'll pull up a chart here for ICOSA real quick because you were talking about ceiling prices and like how low we've ever gone, right?
Yeah.
Here, I'll pull up this chart. So right now, I think the ceiling price is around 40, 39-ish, I believe. I think
Um,
somewhere.
yeah, 35 cents on the Ethereum
I I,
side.
I think I mean in terms of hex, I think we could probably pull it up here. No. Yeah, 42.38 hex ceiling price. So right now, this is the ICOSA chart priced in hex, which means how many hexes it would take you to get an ICOSA. So the ceiling price is around 42 hex. Right now, we are 75% off that ceiling price, and we've only ever been about 90% off that ceiling price. So 90% is about a like a 10, almost a 10x off ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
So and
Hmm.
and that's just at the current ceiling price at the current ratios. As the t-share rate increases on both chains, that's gonna increase the ceiling rate. um but even what we're seeing here, like even if we only go up to like 20 or like 15 or like 10, and hex just does weak performance, like we could still see some good appreciation for ICOSA. Now, in terms of my topics, I want to look at the HSI auctions. um Share my screen here, hex model. Here we go. So recently, the yield on ICOSA, I don't know if many of you guys pay attention to like daily payouts, but it hasn't been sort of as good as like maybe let's say a year ago today. Um, it's been slowing down a little bit, but you can see here we haven't had very many T-shares in the auction at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's been pretty much dry here. So but July 14th we have some T-shares coming up. July 16th, 21st. On the 22nd, there's a bunch of T-shares coming up. Like you could see a bunch of like these 50 T-share stakes and a 20 T-share stake.
Ooh,
So
nice.
so yeah, if you're looking, this is also on the Ethereum chain I'm looking at. So um, people I think are paying more
It's going to be
attention
the
to the
same for
Pulse
the
chain.
Pulse chain too.
Yeah, and it's gonna be the same for the Pulse chain too. So yeah, people are probably gonna be paying more attention to the Pulse chain if I had to guess. So there might be a chance to get some cheaper HSIs on Ethereum. Uh, but yeah, coming up, like it looks like the yields and everything, and like there's some volume coming through the HSI auction, so that's all looking good.
What's the
But
total? What's the total T shares for that July 22nd?
July 22nd, I think it was
You
500 T shares,
That's not bad. Yeah,
527 T
there you
shares.
go.
So yeah,
Okay.
and where are we at right now in terms of ceiling? So yeah, we're kind of down right now in terms of ceiling, which means that we're probably gonna get less recycled T shares. But what is cool about ICOSA is if the inflation's turning off now, one of the biggest like arguments, or maybe not one of the biggest arguments, but one of the biggest arguments I hear people saying is ICOSA is like an incentive token, dump forever token, freely
Hmm.
minted. But if we start to see the uh, inflation rate start to slow down here now, maybe some of those arguments start to disappear, and that leaves maybe some room for ICOSA to appreciate if people stop, like if there's no more inflation to sell, right? But another thing to add on to that is we have whale accounts coming out in the next month, I think, or in the next maybe like 40 days. So I know after the 200, like usually
August 10th.
after, yeah, oh yeah, so just about 30 days from now. And I know
Hmm.
usually after you have kind of an account size unlock, there's usually like a supply shock, and it doesn't always mean price down, but it could mean some short-term sell pressure. But what we're also seeing is like the price is already so low and the liquidity is so low, and these are whale accounts. So if they're gonna want to extract value, they're gonna have to, market dumping is probably not going to be the way a whale is going to extract value if they're looking to sell at this point.
Hmm. We also have the God Wills Hedron stake that's going to end. I want to say in the middle of August. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with that ICOSA. I hope he don't stake. I hope he just uses it for liquidity or something and not stake it.
Yeah. I mean, if we could get some more LP and stuff. I mean, also like if we're on sort of the topic of inflation, I want to talk about like Bitcoin inflation versus ICOSA inflation. Now, or even like inflation in any coin in general. Like what we've seen is you could have like the worst tokenomics ever, but usually like if people they'll latch on to whatever narrative or whatever reason they need to buy the coin, and they'll just continuously buy it. It doesn't matter how much it inflates or how much it deflates. Usually like it's pretty stupid, but like Dogecoin, for example, Bitcoin, all these coins had the most pumpamentals or the most pumps price appreciation when you had the most inflation. Now, if you take this in terms of like Bitcoin, so let's say you went from 50 Bitcoin was the first, like let's say the first block was 50 Bitcoin, right? And by the second halving, I think you have 15 million Bitcoin in existence. So if you went from 50 Bitcoin to 15 million Bitcoin, that's I think 30 million percent, or yeah, 30 million% or something like that in inflation over that time frame, from 50 tokens to 15 million tokens. So I know like Bitcoin has slightly different tokenomics, you could say, in the fact that it has like a different cap supply, but it doesn't have any staking features. I guess it doesn't have any burn mechanics, right? ICOSA's liquid supply is only like 9,500,000, like we were just looking at, because most of it's staked up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that's very very good for price, because like we saw with Bitcoin, imagine if you could have staked Bitcoin, or imagine if there was a way to mitigate the sell pressure on Bitcoin while it was doing that 10,000x or that million x or 6.9 million x or whatever Bitcoin did, right? I think Richard says like if miners didn't have to sell down the price, how much better could like how much more pump could you have gotten if the miners didn't have to dump the price constantly, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're going to find out with Hex and ICOSA, is that like I think tokenomics can play a role in like exaggerating the pumps, but they're not like the most important thing, right?
Yep.
So yeah.
Well, let's get into this next question, but perhaps after we let's go ahead and make our announcement. Um, so
Oh yeah, sure.
I reached out to Alex McWhirter on Twitter, and I was like, Alex, I know this is a shot in the dark, but what do you think about jumping on stream? I said, we'll send you all the questions in advance so you can screen them. We're not looking for, obviously, we'd like, information about what he's up to if he's willing to divulge it. And and we know he likes to be very private. We're cool with that, obviously. And but he agreed. He got back with me, and he's like, "Yeah, let's do it." So I'm arranging that with him, and so he'll jump on with Kong and I. So we have that coming up. Not sure when. We don't have a date yet. But if you have any questions that you would like to ask the founder of ICOSA or Hedron, you know, um, get them to myself or Kong. You can reach out on Twitter or Telegram. We're both there. Um, so yeah, what do you think about this 90-day stakes instead of 90? No, we wouldn't be talking about doing 30-day stakes on Ethereum, but Pulse only, in my opinion, unless the supply went through the roof, which I don't see that happening. Except this is interesting. The supply, the liquid supply of ICOSA has increased since practically day one. It might have had a little pullback, but it just keeps always increasing. So it may be that at some point we can make 30-day stakes on Ethereum. What do you think about making them on Pulse, on the Pulse chain? Let me give my thoughts on this. I think as far as gas, it's reasonable. But as far as managing wallets, you're talking about managing 10 times the number of wallets. And I'm not sure I want to do that even with Tetra involved. What do you think, Kong?
Yeah, so that here's what I recommend. So if you only have, let's say, 1,000 ICOSO or like a 90-day accounts worth, and you're on the Pulse chain already, and like you don't really like the fees aren't really an issue, then yeah, I could recommend like a 30-day account, just because you have like a smaller principal. But 1,000 ICOSA right now is like a few $100, I think, or like maybe even less. So um, it's not exactly viable for most people, especially for someone like me who has like larger principal of ICOSA. Uh, to break them up into 30-day accounts, it would take me forever, and it would be a lot of wallets to manage, especially if yeah, it would just be way too many accounts to manage the fees and like the yield and that whole like compounding effect. It all will still work, and it'll still technically be better than 90 days. But if you have a large principal, like if you're willing to really like go and put like 150 accounts in your wallet, then I guess you could say it's worth it. But that's something that's kind of up to the person. Like for me, I think 30-day accounts are good, but like Prairie says, we'd probably have to wait for account size to increase a little more before I start actually like making those.
Right. So what I tend to do is think in polars, like I'm all over here or I'm all over there. But what I'm learning in this crypto journey is to try to think in ratios. So, in a way that you can be less polar on that idea is, well, let's just do a portion of your principal. Let's stake a portion of your principal in 30-day stakes, not the whole thing. Try it, see how it works. That's an idea for you, Fox. All right. How about we show my other? I want to get into this freedom number sheet. Okay.
Yeah.
I think you guys will like this. This is a little bit. It's not off topic. It's off the topic of ICOSA, but ICOSA can get us here. Okay. And our other assets. So I built this the other day, and this is, I call this like my freedom number sheet. It's a freedom number calculator, and there's a link to it in the description. You can download it and customize it for yourself. So what's your freedom number? What is a freedom number? Freedom number is how much money do I need every month for my living expenses? You know, your mortgage, car payment, food, all your utilities, all that stuff. Well, let's just say it's $5,000. And what's the value of your crypto portfolio today? Let's just say this person has, his value is $25,000 in crypto. And now you need to plug in your expenses to last 3 years. Why 3 years? Because we don't know that we might not have an extended a bear cycle next cycle. I think this one was pretty extended. At least it seemed like that to me. So this $180,000 represents your $5,000 in expenses for 36 months. And then this next number here, and all of these are editable. This next number here is, so if you exited the top, in other words, if you took you exited crypto at the top or near the top and re-entered the bottom, what would that look like? So let's say you pulled $500,000 of your assets at the top or near the top of the next bull cycle, and then you held that so you could buy the bottom with $500,000. Now, if you could invest, and this is just kind of a side, like if you wanted to get into a different asset class and diversify a little bit, like I'm thinking real estate. You know, if you could, what would you like to invest in other assets such as real estate, $500,000 or whatever you want to plug in there? So the number in blue is 1.18 million, which is the total of what you'd need to exit with at the top to pay your expenses for 3 years, invest in another asset class, and re-enter crypto at the next bottom. So in the number in red is your portfolio would need to do this number of X's from today. So that $25,000 in value that your portfolio has today would need to 47X in order for you to accomplish all of this. Does that make sense, Kong?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I actually like this a lot.
Isn't that something? I've had that in my mind, but when you put it on into a spreadsheet, it's like, oh yeah, that's cool. Now notice over here, these three have a little star next to them. That's because it occurred to me you don't have to do all of these at the same time. Like you could exit a little bit early and get your 3 years expenses, and then let it go a little bit further. You know, let the cycle go a little further along, and then pull your 500 grand to re-enter crypto, something like that. You can do it however you want. And this is not financial advice, but I'm going to tell you what, 47X, I think is fair and reasonable for the products that we're in.
Yeah,
So,
that we're
I mean,
talking about
huh?
the products that we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, oh, this is pretty exciting. So, and then if you change it, you know, if your portfolio value was $10,000, then you'd have to 118X, you know, so it's links in the description if you guys want to have a look at that. Shall we answer some more questions, man?
Yeah, let's do it.
What's this? Gnosis safe Hedron minting on Pulse chain. Do you know what he's talking about?
I'm not exactly sure what he means by gnosis safe.
Me neither. Perhaps you can give us some more clarity on that, Marcavelli. You take this one, dude.
What do you think about all the 50 T-shares coming up in the HSI? How will this help all the Hedron being burned? So yeah, usually what happens when you have these T-shares coming up is it gives people an opportunity to bid on them with their Hedron. Now, when someone takes their Hedron into the HSI and bids on some of the auctions, let's say they win, that Hedron that they paid for, the HSI, then gets burnt. And when it gets burnt, that then turns into like complicated calculations and then turns into ICOSA yield. So that's sort of how it works. How will it help with all the Hedron being burned? When you have more T shares in the auction, you'll have to you'll need more Hedron to pay for all the T shares to get all of them out the auction place because once someone starts them, they last 24 hours in the auction house and then it's gone. Right? Someone has to win it. So that and the more T shares you have, the more theoretically the more Hedron you'd have to pay to get that same 50% or 80% discount. Right?
Okay. I'll get back to Marcavelli here in a second because he gave clarity. But Frank Polanczyk. Hey, Kong. Hey, Coin and Key Collector. Just started listening to you in the past month or so. A realtor in downtown Chicago. Nice to meet you. It's nice to meet you as well, Frank.
What's
Welcome.
up, Frank?
All right. So Marcavelli says if you were staked through the Staker app, Gnosis safe. So he says Gnosis safe Hedron minting on Pulse chain. He wants your comments on that. If you were staked through the Staker app, you follow
Um,
that?
I'm not really following. I'm not staked through the Staker app.
I didn't use the Staker app to stake as well. I didn't. But Gnosis, some Staker app is built on Gnosis safe, if I remember correctly, something like that.
So what does he mean? Does he mean the like people are able to mint their Hedron or like the some founder is able to mint Hedron?
Yeah, I am not sure. Not sure. Um, you got another topic?
Yeah, I think maybe last thing I want to talk about here is or one of the last things at least would be like incentive compounding. So
Okay.
what we have here, I'm gonna share my screen, is an incentive PulseX compounder. This is for 15 years. So what this is 180 days for 15 years versus if you were to just do the same amount but just not compound it and just like let the incentive sit and accumulate yield. What would be the difference there? So what we could see here is our biggest risk with liquidity providing would be the impermanent loss. Now, if we look at PulseX incentive token, let's incentive PulseX. So essentially, I don't know how many of you guys watching were paying attention. Yesterday we had some green candles, which was very nice. But if you notice, PulseX and incentive essentially move together one to one. Like you can see here, there's been a little bit of like chatter, but these are very small, like one or 2%, like 3%, little deviations here. So it's been consolidating mostly sideways between pulse X and incentive, like between that ratio. So what that means is like theoretically low and permanent loss because when you're dealing with LP, you're going to get less left with whatever token goes up less. So you're going to have more of the worthless token, which means that if you have two tokens that are able to stay the same value relative to each other, then all you're doing is just earning incentive in this case. You're just accruing yield. So it is still a bit risky because this chart could break in like either direction, but for the past like let's say week or so, we've been consolidating mostly sideways, which is good for liquidity providing. Now, what we've seen here is let's say you had $500 of pulse chain, $500 of pulse X, $500 of incentive. You could just compound this, and by the end of, let's say, your 15 years, it's looking like you could see these large numbers, right? Now, this would be at our current APR, which is about 125%, but this would also be this is subject to change with the incentive price in the future. So as the incentive price fluctuates, so will the APRs and stuff, which will make this like compounding either more effective or less effective, right? Because all the incentive token you're getting is gonna be like you're getting paid out with incentive token, and the price of that incentive token is gonna dictate your APRs and APYs. So, yeah, that's just one thing I want to talk about is if you're wanting to do some liquidity providing, as well as if you want to do some liquidity providing, that pair is low key. It could have low and permanent loss. Now, if you're wanting to know where to provide liquidity, I'll share my screen here again. All you got to do is go to PulseX. Now, there's V1 and then V2 pools. V2 V2, you get to accrue fees. So if you provide liquidity in a V2, like if you go here to liquidity, add liquidity, if you do this in the V2 farm, you will earn fees. So you'll earn 0.22% of all trades on the pair according to your share of the pool. Now, if you're in the V1, if you switch it to V1, then now what you can do is once you get this liquidity, 100% of your fees are going to get burnt to the buy and burn for PulseX. But then what you can do is go to the farms and then go ahead and stake your LP for more incentive token. So essentially, V1, you get to earn incentive. V2, you get to earn fees. And you can go and flip flop between them. Like if you had a PulseX Wrap Pulse LP here, let's say you wanted to harvest your ink and then unstake your LP, you could then take your coins back, go back into a V2 liquidity pool, and then like re-enter your liquidity as a V2 pair instead of let's say a V1 pair, right? So those are just a few different options you have, but just remember that all incentive farms are on V1. So if you wanted to do some incentive compounding, it would have to be on the V1 PulseX pairs there.
Right on. As we were talking, we got 28 people in here, which is pretty cool. I remembered him streaming with Sloth on Saturday morning. I forgot to mention that. So that should be fun. How about I'm going to show one other calculator, Kong, and then I'll let you wrap it up unless we have any more questions.
Yeah,
So
I think
what?
if you guys have questions, get them in right now so we can get them answered before we hop off.
Yeah. So this is a calculator that I made some time ago, and what it does is illustrates the power. It illustrates to me the power of ICOSA over, dare I say, Hex and Hedron. So this is an example. Let's say a guy has 30,000 bucks, and he puts an equal amount in Hex, ICOSA, and Hedron. And here we have this. Here we have the ceiling price, and this is the ceiling price right here, and then we have the floor price. Don't get carried away with the terms. Floor price means, to me, means like a 5x below the ceiling price, which is historically where it's kind of been. So if ICOSA went to this, so if you put $10,000 in ICOSA that was with Hex at 0.08 cents, and this was done some time ago when the prices were different, but it would net you, if ICOSA went to the ceiling, $49,596 in ICOSA and let's call it $513,000 in Hedron if it were at its ceiling price. And then as time goes, actually as the share rate increases, You see this red number here? Right here is where, okay, the red number here is where at the floor price, Hedron is in the lead. It's in the lead. And then right here, when that share rate reaches about 29,000, and none of this is set in stone, this just illustrates to me the power of ICOSA. At 29, at this share rate, suddenly ICOSA jumps in the lead. You see it's 130,000 versus 127,000 in value at the floor price. And then ICOSA stays in the lead. Does that make sense to you, Kong?
Yeah, I kind of had like thoughts about that, like not like Hedron. It almost I see exactly what you're saying, and I almost thought about it, but I've never like displayed it like I see here. This is perfect.
Right. I did a video on it about 3 months ago, but I kind of wanted to just bring it in onto this stream here today to like reinstill hope in this token. Like as long ICOSA and Hedron are really dependent upon Hex, but we all believe in Hex. We think it's going to be successful, probably on both chains. So it stands to reason that ICOSA and Hedron have a future as well. And if they do, why, I'm excited about both of them. I don't know about you.
I'm excited for both Hedron and ICOSA. I like that ICOSA looks like it has some fundamentals here coming up once the T share rate starts to ratchet up. But I think that's one thing like lots of people have to realize is like Richard Hart. He always says delayed gratification, delayed gratification, delayed gratification. I think maybe many people have forgotten this, and that everything is compounded interest and delayed gratification. So ICOSA, you can do both, right? You can compound your interest and delayed gratification. And Hex, it sort of works the same way, where it's almost like simulates compounding interest and you delay the gratification. But yeah, in on a long enough time frame, the statistics, the data, it all is pointing towards a certain direction with ICOSA and Hedron, and it's looking good, right? Especially right now, inflation's starting to taper off. Maybe that means like some good price appreciation. It is lower liquidity, which means that if you put less money into the system, we're going to get way more of a pump than if you put the same amount into Hex or Pulse Chain or PulseX. So that's also good as well. And we're still like way under ceiling price. We have lots of room to grow before even an arbitrage opportunity presents itself. So follow the data. It's all pointing towards like a certain direction, sort of thing.
Hmm. Did you make any comments? I don't remember. Did you make any comments on Ink? I've been watching the chat and such. It's hard to pay attention.
I talked a little bit about Ink and some V1s, V1 V2 farms. I think I just got most of that cleared up. Yeah.
Okay. Did you have anything else you wanted to chat about?
I mean, I think that's about all for today's stream. If anyone has questions, I mean, other than that, I think just like keeping on like just waiting for the bull market. I made the video like I have this calculator. I'll pull it up, the AMM. So I don't know if you've seen this, Eric, but this is basically this
I'll
has
show it. So just so you know, when you think you're sharing the stream, your screen, I got to add it. So
okay.
here goes. There now you're sharing.
All right, so this simulates a V2 market maker. Now this isn't 100% accurate because I can't go to like positive infinity or like zero. Like it's not 100% accurate, but it gives you like a rough idea on how like liquidity pools and how price appreciation actually works. Because in the stock market, you have what's called a bid and ask spread, which means that you have someone who wants to sell their stock at a certain price and someone who wants to buy the stock at a certain price. And when you have two people that match, like, or close enough, then you can make a trade, right? Now, when you have decentralized assets like Hex or ICOSA or Hedron, where they exist, where you can buy them, is on an automated market maker. Now, the way that dictates price is a ratio between, let's say, USDC, which is one coin, and ICOSA, which is the other coin, right? So when you have that ratio, it's essentially y times k equals z. So you multiply those two numbers together, that gives you the ratio, and that ratio should always stay constant no matter however many coins are in the liquidity pool. So essentially, depending on how much USDC or how much ICOSA you have in the liquidity pool, if you know what the ratio should be, you can derive price. So since ICOSA is such a low liquidity asset, and how liquidity works is, if I, let's say right now ICOSA has about $2,000 of USDC liquidity. Let's say I add $2,000. What I'm going to basically do is double one side and then take 50% out the other. What that means is taking 50% out of something is sort of like a 2x. So if you go from $50 or $100 to $50, that's a 2x difference, right? Now, if that's a 2x difference plus you added 2x to the other side, you're essentially going to get a 4x in price appreciation. So that's sort of like what this simulates. Now, if you were to take a $25,000 buy into ICOSA and just market buy it, you would see an approximate price at $3.61 ICOSA. Now, if someone were to come here with $100,000 of like just USDC and like come market buy the ICOSA token, not including, like, this is just for the USDC pair, I think the order would probably get routed through like the Hex and through Hedron and through other pairs as well. So it probably wouldn't go up to this extent, but $51 just from a purely liquidity standpoint, if you were to inject $100,000 into the pool, insane price appreciation. And the reason why this is so great right now relative to maybe 3 months ago is because ICOSA had close to $1 million of liquidity going into the fork, or even before the fork. So it'd be around maybe 700, 800K, 1.1 million, 1 million, 900K. Especially in the Hex pair was pretty liquid. So you used to have decent liquidity, which means that if you have, let's say, $1 million of liquidity and you add $100,000, you're not going to move the price very much. You're still going to do very good, like you're probably still going to pump a decent amount, but you're not going to move the price very, very much. Now, if you have $100,000 in a liquidity pool with only $2,000 in it, you're going to do insane things to the price, right? And that's just would be theoretically in a single market buy. So what I'm trying to say is that let's go into Pulse X. Let's look at farms. There's $70 million of liquidity in this pair, right? In this DAI pair, there's $43 million of liquidity. So in an automated market maker, purely liquidity standpoint, if I want to make, or this is DAI from Ethereum. Okay, yeah, DAI from Ethereum wrap Pulse. If I want to 2x this pair, or 4x this pair, sorry, I'm going to need about $43 million of liquidity to market buy, right? Just from like the same sort of like the same logic that I'm using for ICOSA. If you want to apply it to like wrap Pulse, you're going to need $40 million to 4x the price. Whereas on ICOSA, if you get $2,000 into the system, that's a 4x, right? And into the bull market here, we might see some mass adoption. And what that means is, like, if we're going to see mass volume coming in, we might see max price appreciation. And what I also think is that people don't really like to study a whole lot. Like, people like to do their research. Like, the people here now obviously like to do their research, but people coming into the bull market obviously aren't here right now. They're not doing their research right now. They're not setting themselves up. So what that means is coming into the future here, when you have ceiling price, how I said we can go over it, if there's enough demand for ICOSA and you just have people that want yield, they're just going to continuously buy up the price. If nobody is selling, right, and even if you have these ARB people trying to come in and ARB the price down, they're going to have to get Hex from somewhere, whether it's buying it or they already had Hex. They're going to have to stake it for 15 years, which is price positive for Hex. And then they're going to have to give up their HSI to the auction place, which is going to give us more yield. So we'll see what happens, but what I can speculate, what I could see, not financial advice, is like, let's say you had mass volume, mass adoption, is just the price just flying way over ceiling, maybe getting ARB down in the future, but now we not only have insane yield, but probably good price appreciation as well. And that's probably the best two best things you could have is yield plus price appreciation, because when you have both, they multiply against each other and it's exponentially greater, right? Like if I started with 100 tokens and the token did 100x or a 10x, I have $1,000 or $10,000. But if I made 300% APY and I made that 100x or 10x, now I've made like $30,000 or $3,000, right? So it's exponentially a lot better if you can not only make price appreciation, but make yield on top of that.
Well said. I did not follow all of that. You're like leagues ahead of me, man. And that's good. Um, let's answer this question because I've not been playing the auctions. I won one auction like back in November, one, and I've not been participating. I'm excited. I would get totally hooked if I was into those things. But answer this question for X Blind if you would.
Yeah, so for my current Hedron hex T-share ratio, I've been looking at it sort of like close to 100 million hex or 100 million Hedron per T-share. Sorry,
Mm,
that's what I've been seeing a lot. Like if you can get give or take that, like 110 million, 90 million per T-share is fair enough, I would say. Once you start getting more than that, I would start to like maybe look for another offer. Um, but anywhere from like 80 million is on the low end, very very good per T-share. Up to like maybe 150 million per T-share. That's when you're starting to get a little of like pretty expensive.
that's a
Um,
great way to
in
look at
Hedron.
it. I love like we were talking about ratios. I like that. That's a good. If I was going to be doing the auctions, I'd use that because that's you could build a simple calculator in Excel to help you with that.
And even if you're interested in the auctions, I know Crypto Sloth has a very good website. Look into hedron.com.
Hmm.
You can go onto there and like it'll tell you like all different stats and stuff, as well as like hedron.today. That's also a good resource you can use if you would like to like do some auction stuff and like figure out discounts and everything like that. But yeah, as long as you're getting like close to like at least as long as you're getting some sort of discount, like you can't go wrong buying an HSI, right?
Yeah.
Relative to just going onto the market.
Yep. So just to recap, you said, correct me if I'm wrong, like 80 million Hedron per T share on the low side up to 150 million Hedron per T share on the higher side.
Which would be like maybe more expensive, like 140, 150 million. That'd be a lot more expensive. Um, but yeah, I've gotten like extremely lucky in auctions before. Like I've picked up like multiple T shares for less than 100 million. So, um, but
That's awesome.
yeah, but for most people, like I would aim for that 100 million Hedron per T share. Is that's what I would that's me personally what I aim for every single time I go in. If I overpay like 20 or 30% of that, it's also perfectly fine. But as long as I'm just getting a deal relative to what I could go on the market and stake hex for.
There you go. All right. Here's a fanciful comment from Anthony. A little late catching this. Well, welcome. We'll definitely be watching it after work. Cool. Only recently discovered Kong. Dude is leagues ahead of the majority with his content. Agreed. Mad respect.
Thank you, Anthony.
There
Appreciate
you
that,
go.
man.
All right, man. Well, we've been going for an hour and 5 minutes or so. Um, do you have any other comments? I don't see any other questions.
Uh, yeah, I think that's about all. I mean, we'll just wait for the bull market. I showed you guys like just from a purely liquidity standpoint how we're looking, and there's like a million other reasons why. Like Eric, we talked about ceiling prices. Like there's a million reasons why this coin could pump. There's also probably a million reasons why it couldn't. But same thing with Hex, right? People probably had a million reasons why it wouldn't do a 10,000x, but look where we're at now. All I gotta say is like just gotta wait for the bull market, not get like too fudded out. I know the ICOSA price is down, but like I said, from just a purely liquidity standpoint, like if you had like let's say you had $100 million come into Pulse Chain, I bet if even 1% of that went into ICOSA and 99% of it went into Pulse, ICOSA would probably still outperform that like that
Hmm.
amount of money going into Pulse Chain. So you guys can do some maths and like figure it out on your own. I'm sure I'll have more like perspective to like put it in, but uh like many people aren't focused on like the next 2 years, 1 year. Like they want like what's happening like this year maybe, right? But just from a
Right.
purely liquidity standpoint, guys, ICOSA is not only like not only a good play there, but just like fundamentally and technically, like it's looking very good.
Agreed. And I would say, yes, we're waiting for the bull market, but let's be working while we're waiting. So let's go. If you don't already have a second job or a source, a really good source of income, and you're looking to get into, inject more economic energy into this system, go find some extra work. Um, but also not just to generate fiat, but keep working on your staking ladder, your 90-day compounds, whatever kind of system you got that you have going that fits you, keep working it. Let's not give up, because this is what's going to happen a year from now when we're when there's euphoria in the market and everybody's excited about what the markets are doing. The work that we do now, we're going to appreciate it then. But if we slack off, then we might have some regrets a year from now. So let's get into this next bull with no regrets.
And I think the last little thing I want to maybe end off with here is there's game theory. It's called the certain topic. I'm gonna call it Nash equilibrium, which basically means like the easiest way I could explain it is if you the more you deviate from your normal strategy or from your original plan, like the worse you might end off. Trying to like maybe if you're trying to like fix yourself. If you have just like maintained your original strategy, you might have been better off. Now, there's other ways you can explain this. Like if you look at hex staking, you can buy hex, trade it a bunch of times, do all of that to accomplish nothing, or you can just stake it, which probably is what you wanted to do, like in the first place, and do nothing and come out with like the same or better result. So what I'm trying to say is that just because we have Pulse Chain now, we have all this new stuff, we have the new chain, the new tokens, everything, that doesn't take away from the fact that the original plan, the original strategy in EICOSA was 90-day compounds, um, right? So 90-day compounds restake until like that no longer works. So um, from just a purely like game theory perspective, you shouldn't deviate from your original plan. So what I'm still doing is 90-day accounts on Pulse Chain and Ethereum, and I think, not financial advice, most people, not everyone, because I'm not going to tell you guys what to do, but you guys should consider doing the same, because the more you deviate from your original plan, the worse off you might actually end up being.
Agreed. And Yo Mammy says, "Hey Kong, does your team take calls?" I think they're looking for consulting. Would be my guess.
Yeah, I do. I think if you message me on Twitter or Telegram, we can get something sorted out.
Okay. And I do the same. Reach out to me on Twitter if anybody needs help, but that way. But obviously, Kong is more advanced. All right. And Rocking 911 had a good comment about my plug. He says, "Just don't FOMO." Yeah, that's good. All right, man. Well, let's call it a show. Hey,
Wrap it
thanks.
up here.
Yeah, 22 people here. That's good. I think that's great actually for a bear market. So it's been it's been good. It's been fun. We'll have to do this again. All right, everybody. Have a good day.